common point that we hear from human beings as outsiders in what we're walking and applying and living within and as destiny. And I specifically emphasize outsiders because such human beings have not in fact done any practical investigation into and as the actuality of what we're in fact walking, living and applying as destiny, but have interpreted and perceived and acquainted themselves with the material and the tools from a starting point of deliberately attempting to or trying to find something and or someone as a point that can be attacked in one way or another. And thus, in terms of the purpose within their relationship towards destiny, is not one of actually really investigating and finding out what it is that we're in fact physically, practically doing, but to justify and validate and make right their opinion, point of view as actual assumption of what it is that we're doing, walking, living and applying, because they haven't in fact really done any practical, real investigation into and as what we're doing. And therefore the premise of all their statements is absolutely unsubstantiated, with no ground to stand on, because all of it is based on beliefs, perceptions and ideas within and as their own mind consciousness system, and therefore no statements or interactions with what we're walking, doing and living have in fact any validity. If one is actually really serious about investigating something and or someone within the actual context that they exist, walk, do, apply and live within actual physical, practical reality, one would utilize what in anthropology is referred to as cultural relativism, where one investigate, explore and experience a culture within the context that it exists, with no prejudgment of one's own frames of reference or worldviews, but actually having a direct insight and perspective to and as what is being walked. And human beings attempting to or trying to attack what it is that we're doing, living and walking are in fact what anthropologists refer to as ethnocentrism, which is looking at, investigating and perceiving a culture, society or people within one's own internal frames of reference, worldview and judgments. And so one's interaction becomes one of judgment and comparison instead of equal, and one being here and investigating. So within, in fact, applying cultural relativism, one will, within investigating and doing one's research within how we're walking, realize and understand the greater context of what it is that we're doing in terms of walking for self and existence as Destonians as a whole. That what our starting point is ourselves as existence as a whole, as a solution for ourselves as existence as a whole. I mean, it is a existential context within we're walking, but obviously human beings that do not do their research, investigation into the material and videos that stand as what we're walking, who we are, how we're living and applying, will only take fragments and sections of the totality of what we're walking, like puzzle pieces, and not even actual real puzzle pieces of what we're doing, walking, applying and living, but their interpretation and perception and idea of those pieces or parts or fragments of the totality of what we're walking, and then attempting to, or trying to, through, within and as their own internal frames and references and worldviews, try and understand, interpret, or delineate what it is that we're in fact doing, walking, living and applying as who we are within ourselves and our living. So therefore, especially for newcomers within Destiny, I suggest applying what anthropologists refer to as cultural relativism, and do oneself the favor of actually investigating practically through going through the material, watching the videos, reading blogs, actually assisting and supporting oneself to see and hear unconditionally what it is that we're saying, showing and illustrating through what we ourselves have in fact lived and applied as ourselves, meaning what all the Destonians are sharing and showing within their material, within their videos, is themselves, that they have in fact taken the time to self-investigate, to self-explore within their self-directed principle of their will and motivation to change themselves to a starting point living that's in fact best for all within who they are and their living behavior, and within that present a solution for the world as a whole, as humanity, equal and one. Because in changing one's starting point living within a context as was best for all, equal and one, one starts seeing, realizing, understanding, considering and regarding everything and everyone within and as that context. And therefore the principle of equality and oneness is in fact equality and oneness for everything and everyone. Obviously, for that to become a reality, we have to become it a reality ourselves, and that's where it starts, with self. So the process of self-forgiveness, self-corrective application and writing is the practical walking process of establishing self-equality and oneness, where we become equal and one in our living within ourselves, towards others, nature, the animal kingdom, the environment, and then eventually the world. But you first start within yourself, where we stop our self-separation within our mind as personalities, thoughts, energies, reactions, like all these constructs and systems and designs and patterns and habits that we separate ourselves into and as within ourselves, that we can become physical, self-directed living beings that actually live here in reality and interact with the physical reality. And within and during that process of establishing such self-awareness, one starts seeing, realizing, understanding the manifested consequential impact our isolated, separated living of the mind has had on this world, this earth, humanity, and others as ourselves. And in that, one's living naturally becomes inclined to finding a solution that will assist and support this world as a whole. And so many of us are standing together and standing up within ourselves and our living and our expression within ourselves and our world, and are within and during that process sharing our insights, realizations, experiences of what we're seeing, we're realizing, understanding, as we're expanding ourselves out of our minds into the physical reality, seeing the actuality of the physical as what is here in fact. So one of the common things or points that we're hearing is that Bernard Pullman is the leader, and that we're being brainwashed, and that what we're doing, walking and living, is his words and what he is saying, but that is in fact not so, and this is why. What Bernard is sharing within the videos, within the material that has been walked thus far, is his insights, his experiences, his perspectives, his realizations of what he has seen, realized, and understood for himself, about himself, as the world, as existence as a whole. And that he has walked within his process of expanding who he is and what he lives, through walking out of the mind into physical, practical reality living. And within that, sharing and showing, assisting and supporting others to see with equal and one what he has seen, realized, and understood about himself, about existence, about the world as a whole, within the principle of equality and oneness that he has practically, physically walked for and as himself. And what is being shared is the tools of the practical process to be walked for as and by self, to see, realize, and understand the equality and oneness that in fact exist here as ourselves, each other, nature, the animal kingdom, the world, and existence as a whole. So each individual that is standing up and walking with this process of equality and oneness is walking with. We're walking this together. There's no leadership hierarchy within and as this process. For example, with what we're sharing with self-forgiveness, writing, self-corrective application, we're sharing the tools and our experience, insight, realization, exploration, discoveries, and perspectives that we have lived, experienced, seen, direct, immediate here as ourselves, in walking the practical tools for and as ourselves. In that, Bernard does not exist in one's application, in walking one's own process of self-forgiveness, writing, and self-corrective application. That is an individual process that a person walks for and as oneself. And that within and during that process, one explore, investigate, and discover oneself within oneself, and expand oneself from the mind into the physical. And if you walk this process for yourself, you will in fact expand. You will see the extent to which you've limited and isolated yourself in your mind with thoughts and reactions and external world to relationships, sex, money. And as one starts moving through and out of those systems, those constructs, those patterns, and those habits, you'll start seeing more and more of life and of living and of yourself and of others than what one initially conceived, because one has been so preoccupied in one's mind with energy and one's external world with money that one has missed a total existence that's here in fact. So the whole point of human beings attempting to or trying to invalidate what we're walking, living, doing, and applying as ourselves through, trying to manipulate this practical reality process for all as one is equal and equality and oneness, and stating that Bernard Pullman is the leader and that we're being brainwashed, has no validity and has no substantial reasoning and practical considerations of what is in fact happening, because each human being make a decision of themselves, within themselves, to walk the process of self-forgiveness, self-writing, self-corrective application, and it's an absolute personal process. If one have a look at who is in fact existing within self, and one for a day simply observe one's own thoughts, internal experiences, reactions, and interactions, one will realize that everything that's happening inside oneself is in fact self. The thoughts you have, the reactions you have, your internal conversations, your thinking processes, your patterns, your habits, your behaviors. You are in fact accepting and allowing yourself to exist as what is happening and manifesting and being created and generated within and as self. Nothing and no one else is existing within self but self. And thus, in terms of brainwashing and following something or someone is within all contexts within this world actually incorrect, because in terms of the decision to participate within something and with someone is in fact a self-decision within a self-responsibility. Therefore, no one in existence is in fact being brainwashed. Whatever one do and one participate in is in fact a self-decision within self-responsibility. And therefore, in terms of what is being superimposed or projected towards Bernard is in fact what human beings are doing, accepting and allowing within themselves in their own worlds. What we're walking with Destiny is not brainwashing, is not following, is not a leadership, is not a hierarchy. It is an equality and oneness where beings are in fact standing together within that principle of equality and oneness, walking equality and oneness practical tools where we're together within our own self processes, walking, writing, self-forgiveness, self-corrective application, assisting and supporting ourselves and each other in equality and oneness to expand ourselves and our living, to incorporate ourselves, each other, the world, the earth, nature, and the animal kingdom, that we can assert ourselves in our living as self-leaders within ourselves and our lives, together, equal and one, to consider and regard ourselves and the world and existence as a whole in equality and oneness, so we can live towards a solution for ourselves and the world as a whole. So I suggest always investigating and making sure that what one is in fact investigating, one is investigating within the point of actually looking at what one is reading, watching, sharing, or experiencing with someone within the moment, unconditionally here as what is here. And consider what's happening within self. Be self-honest about one's thoughts and one's reactions. To, for a moment, step outside of one's internal personal box and look at the greater picture of what it is that we are presenting, standing up for, and standing as. And that we're in fact living a principle of equality and oneness, a self-directed living principle where we're asserting ourselves and our living through self-forgiveness, self-directed principle, and self-application, where there's no leader, hierarchy, or brainwashing involved, because it's an absolute self process. Changing, asserting, assisting, and supporting self within self. There's no one and nothing existing within self but self. And we're suggesting that we assert our living as the self, stop considering only our own thoughts as energy, as consciousness of mind that has been constructed and construed into survival, greed, and self-interest, and step out of that into the physical, into reality, and start realizing, seeing, and understanding that there is more to life, living, self, and existence than just thoughts and reactions. Suggest assisting and supporting self to, for a moment, consider that there's more to self, to life, to existence than just thoughts and reactions. Assist and support self in walking the process, self-forgiveness, writing, self-corrective action, to realize that one can in fact become the direct principle of who self is in every moment of breath, and that one can direct and change one's living to that which will be in fact what is best for all, and through that change this world. Join us.